This is National Native News. I'm Antonia Gonzalez. The Dakota Access Pipeline must be shut down and drained of oil by August 5th. That order was handed down by a federal judge Monday. Judge James Boasberg had ruled earlier this year the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers violated the National Environmental Policy Act when it granted an easement to construct the pipeline under Lake Oahe. Boasberg says the Corps failed to produce an environmental impact statement even though the project required one. In March, he directed the Corps to complete the statement and took briefs on what the remedy should be in the meantime. Monday, Boasberg ruled the permit should be vacated until the Corps can complete the environmental study, which the Corps says will take 13 months. A grassroots movement drew international attention to tribal opposition of the pipeline as people from around the world camped near the Standing Rock Reservation in 2016 seeking to stop construction. The Rapid City, South Dakota-based group Indian Collective announced the Black Hills Bail and Legal Defense Fund over the weekend after an action near Mount Rushmore by Indigenous people and their allies led to arrests. According to Indian Collective, about a dozen people were arrested Friday blocking a road to Mount Rushmore leading up to President Trump's visit to the area. In a live stream by Indian Collective, men and women are seen holding a line blocking the road as police in riot gear move in. President and CEO of Indian Collective Nick Tilson was among those arrested. A rally was held over the weekend outside Pennington County Jail seeking his release. The group is calling for the closure of Mount Rushmore and for the Black Hills to be returned to Lakota people. Indigenous people marked Canada Day last week with counter-demonstrations. Dan Karpenchuk has more.
Led by the Indigenous rights group Idle No More, Native people marked the day as a day of mourning with peace marches aimed at throwing a spotlight on the injustices they say they experienced in their communities. The Cancel Canada Day protests were meant to honor Indigenous, Black, migrant, women, and trans people who have died. And in a statement, the organization said it could not celebrate the ongoing genocide within Canada against Indigenous people. About 200 demonstrators gathered in downtown Vancouver. A peaceful vigil was held in Hamilton, Ontario, and a few dozen held rallies in Saskatoon, Halifax, and Fredericton. Perry Bellegarde is the national chief of the Assembly of First Nations. Bellegarde says everyone must remain hopeful that they can build a better country together.
There is systemic racism and systemic discrimination in all systems, whether it be the healthcare system, the justice system, the educational system. But in order to deal with that, you have to acknowledge that it exists and then start working together to fix it. It's not acceptable in 2020. It's not acceptable at all in any year. And so we have a lot of work to do to go beyond that now. And I think there's a huge opportunity, but we have to do this together.
This year's Canada Day comes amidst anger over police brutality against Indigenous people, protests against pipelines, and accusations of systemic racism against Indigenous people. And many critics say celebrations of holidays such as Canada Day are celebrations of the symbols of colonialism. For National Native News, I'm Dan Karpenchuk.
The National Congress of American Indians welcomed Friday's announcement by the Washington football team that it would conduct a thorough review of the team's R-word name. In a statement, NCAI said it's committed to addressing the name change. Other Indigenous advocacy groups are expressing caution, including Arizona to Rally against Native mascots. In a statement, AZ Rally questioned the motives behind the NFL team's announcement due to pressure from its financial sponsors. The statement said team owner Dan Snyder has ignored calls to change the name by individual Native people, Native organizations, and litigation. The team's announcement comes as racial justice events are being held across the country. I'm Antonia Gonzalez.
National Native News is produced by Koahnic Broadcast Corporation with funding by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
For Native Americans affected by domestic violence, the Strong Hearts Native Helpline offers peer-to-peer support and resources. It's safe, confidential, and toll-free at 844-7-NATIVE. Program support by the National Indigenous Women's Resource Center. Support by Ramona Farms, offering wholesome and delicious foods from our heirloom crops as our contribution to a better diet for the benefit of all people. We are honored to share our centuries-old farming and culinary traditions online at ramonafarms.com.
Native Voice One, the Native American Radio Network.